historical moment in the life of Franklin County, and we seek to make the best selection. So what we want to do is hear from each candidate. And at this time, we're going to allow each candidate to take 1 minute to introduce yourselves. And at the conclusion of that 1 minute, we ask that you pass it along. We're going to start alphabetically with the ladies first. So if I remember my ABCs, we'll start with Natalia Harris. Introducing yourself. I said if I remember my ABCs, Favors. Excuse me, Shayla Favors. Shayla Favors. I said if I remember my ABCs. I've been preaching today, so you know, my mind is gone. Shayla Favors, come on, I want you to introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for hosting us again to have this very critical conversation in our community. My name is Shayla Favor, and I'm running for Franklin County Prosecutor because I believe that we can be the change that we want to see, that we can become a model county that not only works to address violence in our community, but we can also work to reform an unjust, inequitable system that leads with transparency, that prioritizes accountability, and honors the dignity and respect of every Franklin County resident. I am very grateful to be here with you all this afternoon and look forward to another dynamic conversation.
H.
My name is Natalia Harris, and I am running for Franklin County Prosecutor because I believe that I am the best qualified, most experienced, most prepared candidate in this race. I also want to share with you that I have made it a point to run a clean campaign throughout this entire campaign season. And I want to share with you that there was an incident that happened last week where someone at an event that I was at shared with me that my campaign lit that was on their car was swapped out with that of Shayla Favor. And that's important because this role is not just experience isn't important, is also important, but also integrity is important. And so I want you to think about that because I don't want a prosecutor that has a win by any means mentality, because that is what has led to the historic injustices in our system that you and I all know about. That is what leads prosecutors to withhold evidence and manipulate facts for the win, which leads to wrongful convictions. And that is also what leads individuals to sacrifice the safety and well-being of our community for the win of the next opportunity. And so I look forward as we talk about these particular issues in our community with the panel, and hopefully I will earn your vote by the end of it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for telling us something about yourself. Anthony Pearson, I think, is the next one.
Yes. I'm Anthony Pearson. I'm so blessed and happy to be here today. I'm glad the sun is coming out. I went to Ohio State University for law school. I graduated in 2002. I've been practicing in Franklin County mostly as a prosecutor since 2005 as a felony prosecutor. I believe I'm the most qualified candidate for this position because I have the experience of what it takes to get our community, our legal justice, our justice system, and legal prosecution system to the next level. And I look forward to working with each and every one of you and look forward to answering the questions. And I also believe integrity is vastly important in our position. Being the chief law enforcement officer for the entire Franklin County, integrity is really all that you have. And you have to make sure that you're abiding by a good North Star. So thank you for your time, and I look forward to talking to you tonight.
And John Rutan.
Thank you. I'd like to first thank God. I think that's most important, especially in the house of church. I'm always surprised I'm the only candidate that mentions him. One thing I love about God is feelings. And he always can tell you which is the right way, not necessarily by words or actions, but by the way you feel. And the other day, I was asked by the Republican Party to do the Pledge of Allegiance. And it's been a while since I've looked at the words. And the first sentence offended me. And the first sentence is, I pledge allegiance to the flag. And I realized it bothered me because my allegiance is to God. And that's what separates me from every other candidate, because I believe we're all equal, and I believe that's what's important. And one of my favorite words in the Pledge of Allegiance is liberty. And I had to look that up too. And what liberty is liberty is freedom, but it's not just freedom, it's freedom from oppression. Well, what's oppression? Oppression is not being treated fairly. Well, what better position is than this for me? Over the past 13 years of running my own law firm, I focus on criminal defense. And I've been doing that to make sure people are treated fairly. So what I've learned is instead of fighting to help out a few, I'm going to take this position to help out many. And where I see oppression throughout my career is charges. Prosecutors overcharge because they treat it like law school. I also see it in bail. One of my opponents up here will blankly say $400,000. That's oppression. That's not fairness. That's not applying the law. When it comes to plea offers, I hear people say, I'm going to hire black candidates. Well, that's great for voting, but when I hear that, I also hear I'm going to give preference to color. Then what do you do with charges? What do you do with plea offers? Where do you separate the two? And then finally, and it comes to trials. Trials is a big deal because throughout my entire career, I've been fighting for fair trials. So with me as a prosecutor, it's not about winning, it's about presenting the evidence. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm not a Republican candidate. I'm the candidate for all victims, defendants, prosecutors, and public. Thank you for your time, and I'm grateful for you all being here. Thank you very much.
Come on, let's put our hands together for all four of our candidates. And we are so thankful that they have all come out to spend some time with us this afternoon. We have some prepared questions for our candidates, and I'm going to try a new role. Normally I'm the pastor, but now they've made me the MC moderator of this discussion. So that's going to be quite interesting in and of itself. And so we have some prepared questions. And once we read these prepared questions, we're going to give each candidate about 2 minutes to answer each question. I will be timing you. And if you get short with me, I'll probably get short with you. Also, we're going to open up the floor at a period in time and give you the opportunity to ask questions. Again, the instructions will be ask the question. And we don't need a long dissertation on the history and all that kind of stuff. We need you to ask the question to give our candidates the opportunity to respond in an appropriate manner. Again, we are thankful for all four of our candidates. And if you all don't mind, can I call you by your first names today? Wonderful, wonderful, but you can't call me by mine. I thought I'd tell you that. Okay, anyway, no, seriously. So let's get started. I'm going to open up with the first question today, and we're going to try to do this in a timely manner so we don't want to be here all day long, but we're going to jump right into it. One of our questions that comes to us today, what do you know about the Marcy Law, the Ohio Crime Victims' Bill of Rights? How would you implement this law, particularly when there is a police officer involved shooting that is questionable? It appears that the police officer identity and body-worn camera footage are not being released at this time, and they are being named as victims using the Marsy's Law to support them. Again, what do you know about the Marsy's Law, and how would you respond to this issue? Who would like to go first? Go right ahead, John.
What Marcy's Law is, it basically tells lawyers that before you work something out, the victim has to have notice. I believe it's fair. So I think one of the most important things that I've learned being a defense attorney, because I get hired by victims as well, is victims just want to be heard. So in my opinion, my job as a prosecutor is to make sure victims don't get victimized twice. And what that basically means is, what do you feel, what do you want, what are your desires? Now, when it comes to the second part of your question about how would I treat police shootings, I live by 2 commandments. Love God with all your mind, body, and soul. And my favorite one is love your neighbor like you love yourself. And what does that mean to me? It means treat others the way you want to be treated. So if we are disclosing to the public, like, I don't know if you've been in a gas station, but there's this paper called Busted, right? And then when you're accused of crimes, they put you in a paper. So if you can do it to them, then we can do it to you. So that's how I feel about it. I feel that as long as it falls within the lines of it's not privileged, then it gets disclosed. Because if you're accused of a crime, you get, now one thing I will say though, is when it's an investigation, because the way police shootings work, just so people know, because I think it's a big deal for public to understand how this works, is whenever there's a police shooting, the Ohio Bureau of Investigation, which is a statewide agency, is supposed to evaluate it. Why? Because they aren't counting and there's not
10 seconds.
Oh, then once they get the file, then they turn it over to me. I present it to the grand jury. If the grand jury charges, did you hear I said, I'll turn it over to me. It's no one person's decision to determine.
Thank you so much, John. We thank you for your answer. Who would like to go next?
I'll go next. I'm very familiar with Marcy's Law. I would share that it is more expensive.
Use your microphone,
Is it
please.
not on?
Yes, I can
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Okay, thank you. I am familiar with Marcy's Law, and it is a little bit more expansive than what Mr. Rutan just shared. Marcy's Law essentially requires the prosecution to ensure that victims are kept informed of what is happening to their case every step of the way, from the time a person is charged up through the time that the person is released from, if they're sentenced, when they're released from their sentence. Marcy's Law was codified into our Ohio Constitution a few years ago, which is what gives literally victims now constitutional rights under the Ohio Constitution. So I'm very familiar with what Marcy's Law is. If I'm remembering correctly, I do not believe that there is case law that has come down yet that has discerned whether or not the manner in which some agencies are preventing body-worn camera video from being disclosed under the guise that, in the case of officer-involved shootings, that the individual officer or officers are protected under Marcy's Law. My position is I believe that that is not an intended application of Marcy's Law, nor what is enshrined in our Ohio Constitution.
Thank you so much.
Can everyone hear me?
What I would say to Marcy's Law is that it runs counter to, although well-intentioned, I believe that it's running counter to what it was originally intended, to our provisions around sunshine provisions, as well as to what I have been advocating for, which is that notion of transparency. And so what we're finding is that when we do have police involved, shootings that have occurred in our community, people want to know who was involved in that shooting. And it could be something as simple as someone who was involved in that shooting, the officer who was involved in that shooting, but did not, if he was grazed or something very short of actually being injured, they would be protected under the current provisions of Marcy's Law. So I would be in the camp for advocating for changes to the provision. Once again, I don't believe as it's being applied is what we thought we were going to get with Marcy's Law.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. That's a very good question. Marcy's Law is certainly intended to protect victims, but it's also intended to protect uncharged suspects. And so if I am a suspect in a crime and it's public, the government does not have to give out that information because I am uncharged at this point, which kind of makes sense, right? You don't want to get slandered and have your name run through the mud for something you end up having to not have done. So I think it's good from that perspective. However, there was this discussion in the past couple of years of what about officers who are involved in shootings? They shoot someone, it's not taken to the grand jury yet, or it has been taken to the grand jury, and we really don't know whether they have committed a crime or not, so should we actually release their identity or not to the public? But I believe that recently, within the past year, there has been case law to come down that says that it does not apply to police officers. So I believe that has actually remedied itself. But I also agree with that because I think the importance of knowing the conduct of your police officers, the people who are policing you, is more important and outweighs, in my opinion, the need to keep that information secret when it applies to police officers. But again, I'm almost positive that has been remedied in the courts. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. This next question is a little lengthy, and one of our wonderful citizens submitted it, so if you give me the opportunity, please listen closely. The ACLU reported in September 2020 on their bail reform. Now, Ohio could save big by implementing bail reform, a fiscal impact analysis that in Franklin County, nearly 70% of the defendants charged with a misdemeanor either posted bond or released on their own recognizance. On average, these individuals spend fewer than 5 days in jail. The 30% of defendants charged with a misdemeanor who were not released on their own recognizance and did not post bail spent more than 13 days in jail pre-trial, which is nearly 3 times longer. Oftentimes, the days in jail can impact one's employment, housing, and financial burden on families. How do you plan to reduce days, if elected, and assist those persons with these kinds of life challenges?
Easy. Apply the law as it's written. That's why you don't need bail reform. You just need a lawyer in there that applies the law. I fight for bail all day long, and I don't know why it's as bad as it is, and that's one of the reasons why I'm choosing to run. Here's why bail is important, because if you give somebody reasonable bail, guess what they can do? They can hire a lawyer who they want. And guess what happens when you can hire a lawyer you want? The cases move quicker because they feel like they have proper representation. Here's the other reason why I love bail, and really one of my favorite reasons. Because when you grant bail, it makes a prosecutor's job easier. Because if you're out and free, you have 2 choices as a defendant. Continue on with your life or try to correct the situation. And one of our goals as a prosecutor is to see if they're amenable to treatment and are trying to do better. So instead of leaving somebody locked in jail, when they're presumed innocent, by the way, presumption of innocence doesn't even apply anymore, but when you're presumed innocent, you should have all the opportunity in the world to get out and fight your case. But the moment you violate bail, you don't get out again. So my position is very simple. Apply the law. The purpose of bail is to protect the public and secure your appearance. That's it. Not to drain your resources, not to punish. I heard a prosecutor say, well, if you have a prior this, I'm going to give you $400,000. That's punitive. How about we convict him first? How about we be sure that this guy's not presumed innocent? So bail, that's how I'd handle it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, John. That's easier said when people can't afford bail. But we have a large amount of citizens who can't even afford bail and post bail.
Thank you for the follow-up, and that's why the purpose is to secure your presence and protect the public. What does that mean? If you aren't a flight risk because you have no order ends, is what we call it in court. The court will say, hey, how many order ends, which means how many times in this person's life did they not show up? Well, if the answer is none, guess what? 0 bail. Here's another one. There was a domestic violence issue between me and my wife for 20 years. Isolated incident. You don't need a high bail for that. It's isolated. It's one incident. Now, where it becomes an issue is robbery and stuff like that. That's a danger issue. But I'm with you. Any misdemeanor should be what we call own recognizance, and it basically means get out for free. And once again, the most important thing for people to realize, and the lawyers to realize, we want you out. We don't want you sitting in jail, because if you're out, you have the opportunity to prove to us what is a fair sentence. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Who else would like? Wait. Hold your question. Hold your question. Please hold your question. We need to give everybody else the opportunity. Then I'll come back to you. Just don't forget. All right. Come on. Who would else like to answer that question?
I'll go again. We actually ended up doing something very similar to what people would identify as bail reform in Delaware, and unfortunately, it was COVID that triggered it. COVID was a horrible thing, but I do think that there was some good that came out of it, and in this case, it was that we reevaluated how we were handling bail relative to misdemeanor offenses, and not that we were doing it incorrectly the first time around or pre-COVID, we just learned a way that we could do it more efficiently. And what we ended up doing was looking at the likelihood that the person would return, because a lot of people who offend or who come through Delaware's municipal court don't live in Delaware. So the likelihood of them returning is definitely a factor that we have to consider. But we definitely looked at the egregiousness of the offense that they were charged with. I definitely believe that bail should be used for the original purpose that it was designed for, which is to secure someone's appearance. It is not a pre-penalty or pre-conviction type of penalty. And I think that when we think about, again, the historic injustices that our criminal justice system actually demonstrates to us, this is one of them. This is why we don't believe that the system is designed to help us when you have people who actually implement the system, perpetuating things that are against the fundamental principles upon which the system was based.
Thank you.
I wholeheartedly support cash bail reform. In my opinion, cash bail is the definition of an unjust, inequitable system. If 95% of crimes that are committed are nonviolent and 80% of individuals who are currently sitting in jail are awaiting their day in court, I believe that we need to have some hard and critical conversations about what bail reform would actually look like in our community. There are cities and communities across this country that have approached bail reform in a comprehensive manner. And I think that that would be something that we could attempt to explore here in the state of Ohio. But I support wholeheartedly bail reform.
Thank you.
Thank you. So there have been cases where individuals have sat in jail for over 2 years to only have a trial and be found not guilty. That's not okay. We have to do better. But we cannot just immediately go to a cash bail system without appreciating and understanding the potential consequences of this. Because the first priority should be keeping the community safe. I heard numbers about how much Ohio could save. Well, to me, the big question is, can we still do it while keeping the community safe? Illinois just passed a law last year that got rid of cash bail for a lot of offenses. And so far, it seems to have some success. But I would like to see how the summer plays out. You know, things get hot in the summer, people act differently in the summer, and look at more data to see if it's something that we can apply here. But just really quick, our juvenile system in Franklin County basically does not have bail. Juveniles do not have a right to bail. They're either held because of a public safety risk, or they are released. And all of you know that there are a lot of juveniles here walking around in the streets who have multiple crimes, multiple charges. And it could be a very scary situation if we apply that to the adult level as well. So bail reform, absolutely have to look at it. Very important. But we have to be very careful that when we look at these policies, we don't make our community worse off than what it is right now.
Thank you so much. Yes.
If I could just say, I don't believe that's where he was going, but when we are talking about whether or not we're going to be able to keep our community safe, we also have to, there's the presumption that there are people sitting in jail that are already being found guilty before they have actually been found guilty. So if we know that we are dealing with inequity here, a wealth inequity here, we shouldn't just automatically assume that everyone who would be released from cash bail reform would automatically make our communities unsafe to be in. So I just wanted to clarify my position on that.
Wonderful, thank you.
Isn't all bail, explain it to me, isn't all bail cash bail? I mean, if I'm, you know.
Cash surety or appearance is the term we use, sir. So the courts have the option for all three. So cash is basically, you can just post it yourself. Surety is where you got to use a bail bondsman.
Okay.
And appearance, you can post it with the court and get all your money back when the case is over.
But you guys as prosecuting attorneys don't have any influence over what the bail is going to be due. I mean, you know, I thought it was the judge's decision.
Actually, we do. Thank you so
You
much.
suggested to the judge as to what it
Make
should be?
recommendations.
100%. That's why this position is so important, because there's a difference between employing thinkers or computer programmers. And all these prosecutors do now is say, high bail, high bail, high bail. They don't think. With me, they're going to think. So thank you for that question.
One other question.
Let someone else want to respond to that question.
I would like to respond to that because I don't believe that Mr. Rutan can speak for all prosecutors, and if he is, he definitely can't speak for the prosecutors that work under me, because what they actually do is assess their cases, and they determine what the appropriate bail should be based on the circumstances, whether or not the person's working, where the person lives, where they live in relation to Delaware, their prior history, the egregiousness, or how bad the offense is that they are there for today. And we take all of those things into consideration.
And then you suggest that
And
to the
you
judge.
make a recommendation to the court. Now,
Oh.
this is again where the integrity is important, because where the judge trusts you in your assessment, a lot of times they do defer to the prosecutor on bail.
I see. But they can also overrule what you say, right?
It is actually their decision,
Yeah.
period.
Okay.
Thank you. And who else might out here have a question? Y'all gonna let me do all the questioning? Fine then. All righty. If you are elected, how would you reduce the possibility of wrongful convictions, ensure convictions are reliable, and that the victims are involved? John, you can't go first. You don't know all my questions, so you can't have an answer for all of them. Go right ahead.
I don't want to hog the mic either, but because this was something that I mentioned in my opening, I will go first
Yes.
on this question. The motto in every prosecutor's office that I have led is that the prosecutor's role is unique in that they have a job not just to protect the rights of the victims, but also to ensure that justice is served. And what that means is that our obligation is to ensure that the guilty are held accountable, but also to ensure that innocent people are not found guilty and go to jail wrongfully. And so my belief is that if you ensure to your prosecutors that success does not equal convictions, and your success as an office is not measured by the number of convictions that you have, but by virtue of the integrity that you carry while you're doing your job, the way that you protect the community through safety, through doing your job to the best of your ability, then I believe that that trickles down. If you make sure that your prosecutors know that you are not going to stand for them withholding evidence, for them manipulating facts and acting like things that are true are in fact not true, and when you learn that they do that, you make sure that they are no longer working under you, because whoever is working for you, you are ultimately responsible for them. Then I think once people learn where your moral compass is, you then begin to see outcomes reflective of that.
Thank you so much.
And I'm sorry, if I could also add, there is a conviction integrity unit in this office right now. I have said from the beginning of this campaign that is one of the things that I want to expand on, is to build it up, because what we know from the work of the Ohio Innocence Project, which has triggered a lot of these divisions being established in local prosecutors' offices, is that the reality of people being wrongfully convicted is very real across this nation, and Franklin County is not immune from that.
Thank you so much. Who would like to?
Guess who's been protecting people wrongfully charged for 13 years? Right here. And that's why I'm running, because all you got to do is the right thing. And I promise you this, the most stressful job for a lawyer is a defense attorney, because guess what happens if I lose or something goes wrong? My guy loses freedom. I can't wait to be a prosecutor. You know why? Because all I got to do is present the evidence and do a fair trial and let the cards lay where they may. And so when the victim comes up to me and says, John, why this? I said, you saw the trial. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm the only person up here that has been fighting my whole career. And all I do as a defense attorney is this. What about this? What about that? What about this? Prosecutors hide evidence. I don't know why they do that, honestly. And that's one of the reasons why the prosecutorial staff under my leadership is going to be better, because they're going to have a peace of mind that all I care about is fair trials, not winning. And the problem is people treat it like winning. You win by presenting a fair trial. You win by having the defense attorney. It's that Eminem movie where it's called a mic drop, right? When I'm done presenting my case, that defense attorney is going to have nothing to say because I already did it all. So there's only one person up here that's been fighting for fair trials. I'm the only person up here that's been doing that. And I'm going to carry over my experience to the prosecutor's office to make sure that we don't have to fight the good fight. And more importantly, lie detectors work. So I will provide an avenue to defendants that if they don't want to take the risk at trial, and if they want to present evidence, we'll listen. We're going to be an office that listens to evidence and not take the risk. Thank you, sir.
It almost sounds like everybody that comes before you is preconceived guilty.
Not at all. Are you kidding me? I'm a big advocate of presumed innocent. Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
It's just the
you're
way
on
you
the
were sounding,
defense attorney.
everybody was the, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you. So worse than worse than not convicting a guilty person is convicting an innocent person. That is way worse. And leadership at the Franklin County Prosecutor's Office has to take this seriously. And I believe currently we do take it seriously. I know I take it seriously. I work with the Conviction Integrity Unit in our office. And what that is, it is a division within the Franklin County Prosecutor's Office where anyone can file a petition to have their conviction reviewed. Doesn't matter if it's been appealed by the courts or whatever. It can come from someone who is currently doing time in prison. It could come from the girlfriend. It could come from a parent or wherever. And then that case is looked at, evaluated. I have actually signed and granted someone a new trial based on improper conduct by a prosecutor, I believe, in 2005 when that case was tried, when that case went to trial. So I've actually looked at these files. I've actually done the work. And what's important is that we continue to do that work. We cannot have innocent people rot in prison. That is not acceptable under any administration. So I will make sure that office has all that it needs to make sure that we can look at every single file that comes in the door and make sure we review all of the cases necessary so that we don't have a single person locked in prison under my watch that shouldn't be there.
Thank you, Anthony. Shayla?
So I opened up with leading with transparency and honoring the dignity and respect of every Franklin County resident. This is where the rubber meets the road for me. And so accountability and transparency is critical to restoring community trust. We have to acknowledge that there is very little trust from this community as it relates to their day-to-day interactions with the Franklin County Prosecutor's Office. One way in which I believe we can restore that trust is not only through evaluating cases that have been wrongful conviction cases, but I'm also interested in exploring cases where this office has elected not to pursue charges as well. So my policy, once again, will be to lead with transparency, to prioritize accountability and honoring the dignity and respect of every Franklin County resident, and that's why this is important.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon. Can each of you, is that because we standing close? Yeah. Can each of you explain to us what your plan is for diversifying the prosecutor's office? Because we all know that it's more people that look like me that come through the Franklin County prosecuting office than not. And I would like to know what your plan is for diversifying that office.
Thank you.
And to be clear, that is about, it's more, they're already qualified. So I don't want that to be a part of your answer. They're already qualified.
Sit down. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you for the question. This is something that has come up in the course of this campaign and something that I led with as something that I wanted to address if I am elected. I'm not going to give the nitty-gritty specifics because I have not been elected yet. But in the event that I am not, I will share them and you can hold that to me, hold me to that. I believe that the staff of an office should be reflective of the community that it serves. And I believe that the use of pipeline programs that do exist help with ensuring that you have an office that is reflective of the community that you serve. I believe that ensuring that individuals who are qualified are aware and being intentional to ensure that they are aware of opportunities helps you to have an office that is reflective of the community that it serves. And I have employed things like that and others that have worked successfully When I was in Cincinnati and I became the city prosecutor there, I was their first African-American prosecutor, and when I walked in the door, there were 2 African-American prosecutors on staff, myself included. By the time I left there, the staff was reflective of the community and between 25 and 30% minority staff. I also currently have the most diverse staff in Delaware. And so I have a formula that works, and I intend to employ it in this office. The idea that somehow the black prosecutor is elusive to Franklin County baffles me.
Thank you. Who would like to answer
Qualified
that?
black prosecutor.
So currently, right now, in the Franklin County Prosecutor's Office, out of 131 attorneys, there are 11 attorneys of color. Eight of those attorneys are black attorneys, 3 attorneys are Asian attorneys. So without a shadow of a doubt, we do have a diversity problem with this office. And diversity is more than just race. So it is important for me to not just have diversity as it relates to race, but also in your experience, in your religious backgrounds. This community is a very diverse community, and we have failed to meet the moment as it relates to what that transparency will look like for other folks in our community. A great example, I had an opportunity to be before the Somali community yesterday. And the reality is that both as a former prosecutor, currently as a council member, we do not have adequate translators. We do not have folks that are properly staffed in court that are able to assist our folks who are engaging in what could be some of the most tragic moments of their life with interpreters that can speak for them. So when I think about increasing diversity in this office, I'm thinking from a comprehensive perspective, not just attorneys, but also staff as well, and those who are going to engage with members of our community so that they can also feel seen and adequately represented. So what I will also say is that I have spent a lot of time working with our law students, both at Capitol and with OSU. Served on the board for many years with the John Mercer Langston Bar Association, which is the Black Bar Association here in Columbus. Have invested significant time with our Law and Leadership Institute, though it's a program that helps to nurture young folks who are interested in law degrees. So I would leverage those opportunities to start laying that foundation and that pipeline for new attorneys that are going to come to our team. We also need to invest in technology in this office. We need to update this website, make it so that it's inviting and that we are proactively engaging with folks so that they know what we are about with this office, what this office actually does. And there's no presence, even on social media, so that folks know what we are doing in this office. And then that also means that I want to invest significantly in having a presence in our community, which will once again help to establish some trust so that folks will want to come and work for this office.
Thank you so much. I would hope that as the next person gets ready, you're going to be last. Now, just wait. Just slow down. That you would also consider connecting with the historically black colleges and universities as a pipeline for persons working in the offices. Anthony? Yeah, he going to say something. Yeah, he didn't answer the question. He didn't. No, no. You've already answered the question.
You said something
but you've already answered the question. So
no.
No.
I will act with integrity.
Thank you. Let Anthony answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalia. So we certainly have to increase the diversity in the office. We have to. It's important that law enforcement, even more important, it's more important for law enforcement than any other industry to reflect the community that it serves, for obvious reasons. We have to do everything we can to continue to recruit minority black attorneys because it's very important to get that diversity there. And since coming back to the office in May of 2023, I've really worked really hard to try and increase diversity within our office. I've hired people of color and diversity within the office since just being there since May of 2023. Some of the strategies that I try to employ is essentially connect with the young people, connect with the undergrad students, connect with high school students, to connect with law students, to go and participate with the Black Law Students Associations at the law school, and just tried to interest them in what a career in prosecution looks like. But it is not an easy task. It's not. We'll look at the Franklin County Public Defender's Office. They only have one black public defender. They only have one. So it's incredibly difficult. I also have been part of the National Black Prosecutors Association. That's a national organization of black prosecutors. We meet once a year. There's job fairs. So I plan to have job fairs there as well, so that we can recruit not only from within our local community, but also from other communities as well. Because as you know, people like and live and come to Ohio, in Franklin County and Columbus. So that would also include black colleges and universities as well, to go to those job fairs. But the real important issue is we have to rebuild trust within law enforcement and the community, so people want to be in law enforcement. When talking with young people about being a prosecutor and why they should be a prosecutor, what often comes up is they don't trust the system. They don't want to be part of this criminal law system. So we have to rebuild their trust from law enforcement, from the prosecutor's office, to the community, so they want that career and that lifestyle, so they buy into the future that we all deserve to have.
All right, John.
Well, you can tell a lot from somebody's intellect by the words they use. So when you were doing your opening, I really appreciated it, because the one word you use, which I love, is called mindfulness. And that's exactly how to handle it. I'm aware of it. So the question is how do you handle it? I don't ever want to say I'm going to hire somebody based upon color, because I think it devalues the human. I'm not one of those persons. We got a judge in here that's of color. He's a wonderful guy. He has great energy. He's charismatic. And I'd hate to think that he thinks he got his position because of his color. He got it because he's qualified. He's good at what he's done. Now, color is equivalent to characteristics. So unfortunately, the truth is character matters to me more. Now, by circumstance, because the black people historically have suffered more, to me, they have greater character. I'm the only candidate.
Whoa. You can't speak to how we've suffered.
Okay.
All due respect.
Well, I can.
You can only speak to what you know, but you can't speak to our experience of being African Americans in this country and what suffering does for us. So if you would just stick to your cultural experiences, that will help me out a whole lot.
Okay, well, the way I help you out is, number one, again, I'll be mindful. And number two, I'm not going to devalue any human being by hiring them based upon their color and only their color. I'm going to hire somebody based upon their character. And I'll give you a perfect example. These three up here, I'd hire them, but I would not elect them. And I'll tell you why, because two of the candidates up here have never had a felony trial, and you want to elect them just because of color? How does that help with the backlog of the trial cases? How does that help raise all tides? How does that help educate your trial lawyers so everybody's better at their job? So no, again, I'll be mindful. I'm hiring the best quality candidates out there. Thank you for your time.
And I do think that those of us who are registered voters will select the candidate based upon their qualifications. Your candidates just happen to be of color. Yeah. You're right. It is. All right.
I'm sorry, I need to correct something before we go on.
You can.
Thank you.
You got 2 seconds.
Thank you. Thank you. I don't know who Mr. Rutan was referring to. I'm only going to speak for myself. I have felony trial experience, so you don't have to. No, I have. Let me be clear with you. I have felony trial experience. What I told you was that my murder trial experience was second chair, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
My question is related to the previous question in terms of wrongful conviction. You all responded to that, but nothing was related to the victim. At what point, if someone who is wrongful convicted and they file an appeal, at what point will you involve the victim? because most of the people who are sitting in prison that's been wrongfully convicted has been there for years, and the victims has or believes that the person who harmed their loved one is in prison. So at what point, if things starts to turn, will you get the victim involved and inform them of whatever appeal that's going through?
Yeah, can I?
Yeah.
Well, very early on, the victim should be included when it is discovered that there is a problem with the case. And as a prosecutor, as the only prosecutor on this stage right now, the only one who, well, I have made that call. I have made that call. It's one of the hardest calls to make because I know that victims have, after a conviction and after their perpetrator, I have to use quotes, is sent to prison, there's a sense of relief there. There's a sense that they're held behind bars, I'm good, I don't have to worry about seeing them at the grocery store or any things like that. But to make that call and have to explain the truth is really hard, but it's important, and it should happen early. Not only because it's the right and moral thing to do, but also legally we have to involve you in that process when there are motions filed and things like that, and make sure the victim's wishes are at least heard by the court and by the prosecutor. So I would certainly try and include the victim as early as it is determined that there is a problem with the case. Now, I don't want to, I've also been cognizant of the fact that I don't want to make victims nervous unnecessarily. A defendant may file a motion that is not going to go anywhere, and we know that. There's no need in upsetting a victim when that is the case. So making sure that victims are represented in this process is very important. And we hear a lot about defendants and defendant rights and things like that, but a lot of this is for the victim. A lot of what the prosecutor does is to make sure the person who is victimized, the person who did that is held accountable. And I actually don't think we talk about that enough.
Anybody else would like to answer that?
I would just say transparency applies to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And our job is not only to obtain justice, but to be a voice for victims. And so as early as we possibly could, I would engage with the victims that would be impacted by a wrongful conviction.
All right, we have a question from the floor.
I would balance what the requirements of Marcy's Law were that we were talking about earlier, where part of the responsibility of the prosecutor's office when under Marcy's Law is to ensure that the victim is aware of what is happening in that case. And so while I do understand that there is a dynamic and emotional dynamic associated with that, sometimes, reality is what it is. And I believe that victims need to know the status of the cases that involve them.
Wonderful.
The truth is short, everything else is long. When I know, you'll know.
Thank you.
I have an educational question, I guess, is that this week the Dispatch headline of how the jury is not diversified. And so I would like to ask how your office will participate in making sure that our juries represent our community.
Thank you. Excellent question.
I wish that was within our purview. The jury selection comes from the voter database, so the only thing I could do as a trial lawyer is do my best to ensure a fair trial. So it's just based upon selection. I wish I could pick and choose who came there. It's actually, they call it jury selection. I like to call it jury deselection because they just put 12 in a box, and then out of those you exclude, so you don't get to pick them like you think we get to, but we don't. Thank you for the question.
Thank you.
So I believe that this is where you might begin to see distinctions between us as a candidate and how we see this office moving forward in terms of vision. Although the prosecutor's office is not responsible for the process by which jurors are selected, there is an ability for this office, because of the influence that comes along with it, to begin to advocate for changes to the system from which the jury is pulled from, the pool of people that it is pulled from. Currently, that is registered voters, but what we know is that there's a lot of disenfranchisement associated with voter registration and things of that nature, and so there has been pushes in the past for driver's licenses to be used as people who have a driver's license with the state of Ohio to actually be put in the pool to be voters. I would advocate for that to be expanded for people who have also state IDs. If we know that you're a registered citizen of this state and you otherwise fit the other criteria in order to be able to vote and be a juror, you should be in the pool.
Yes.
Thank you, Pastor. Franklin County Commissioner Erica Crowley here. Thank you for that question. I think as an elected official, it's under everybody's purview to be concerned about the jury pool and that it is registered voters. So we should always be advocating for people to register to vote, turn out to vote, and also advocate for an expanded jury pool. Like, let's understand that it's under every elected official's purview. But for Mr. Rotan, who I've not had an opportunity to speak with, understanding that in the criminal legal system, we have Black and brown individuals who are overrepresented in our jails, those who have not been convicted of a crime. And even when we have policies or practices, as we saw during the pandemic, to release individuals early to reduce our jail population, when it comes to the disparities of those who are incarcerated, even when we reduce the jail population, the disparities among those who are still in our jails are overwhelmingly Black individuals. We cannot have a colorblind approach, right? So not talking about racism is a tool of racism. Having a colorblind or neutral perspective is a tool of racism. So I want to know, because I've had an opportunity to talk to the other individuals who are on the panel about what their plans are in reducing the jail population when it comes to Black and brown individuals. I would love to hear what you have planned in reducing the jail population. For those who are, before they have an opportunity to be convicted, but also we have a number of those who sit in our jails for 2 to 5 years, who probably under the law could have been released earlier due to some circumstances. So I would love to hear what your plan is.
Well, my plan is to treat everybody equally. So how does that apply? That applies very simple. To address your questions for bail. Bail is one of the biggest assets I can include in because I fight for it all day long. So I agree with all of you. I hear Ms. Harris talk about bail for misdemeanors, but misdemeanors is only up to 6 months in jail. So we need to be more mindful of what's a fair bail for serious felons when you're looking up to like 11 years in prison or life in prison. So I agree with the bail. Now, where I can help out the Black community because they're involved more is I can help out in sentence recommendations, because the truth is this position requires good judgment, and it requires judgment to know the difference between punishing a person or protecting the public from that person. It requires to know the difference between punishing and crushing, the difference between repeat and repent. And you don't learn that as a prosecutor, you don't learn that in law school, and you don't learn that working on committees. You learn by working with these people. And so one of the problems and the reason why you have crime at an all-time high, juveniles that go into prison that shouldn't, a backlog of 251 murder cases, 400 repeat offenders, is because you don't have a prosecutor in there that knows how to punish people so you don't crush them. Because if you punish the small things, the big things won't happen. So the way I'm going to handle it is, if you're involved with the justice system, I'm going to give you an opportunity to have another shot at life. The question is what's fair. Another area I can help, and I love this, and I wish more people talked about it, is judicial release. So a lot of times people go to prison and they do good, but they can't get out early because the prosecutor's office is tone deaf, and they just say object, object, object. Well, my office is going to have thinkers in there. So if you go to prison and you go there and you're doing good and you aren't picking up tickets and you're proving you've rehabilitated and it was just a minor mix-up, I'll let you out early. So a lot of areas where I can help out everybody, not just one particular class, is by being fair. and mindful. Too often I see people, it's amazing to me how many people are in prison for drugs and not for child crimes. Like, I don't know about you, but the child crimes are the worst crimes that exist. And they go unnoticed. So, and the other way I'll help, which I believe, which is amazing, I believe white-collar crimes, I don't know why they call it white-collar crimes, a little bit racist, but crimes that involve money, those people need to be prosecuted as well. So I'm all about fairness. Thank you for the question. And I'd love to talk to
We
you
have
about
one more question from the floor. Our time is drawing nigh, so we're going to hear that question from the floor, and then there's one more general question we have.
I've been around for a while, and I've run into a number of rogue cops ever since I was a kid. One of the times I complained to a prosecutor, the prosecutor said, I'll never forget, he said, it sounds like a tempest in a teapot. And that happens all across the country, I'm sure. And I assume it's because the FOP has a strong union. How do I know if I elect you guys that you won't prosecute a rogue cop just because there's a strong union here? Columbus probably has as strong a FOP as anybody. So how do I know you won't just be like everyone else?
Here's your answer. Thank you. I love that.
John,
Oh, sorry.
let somebody else talk.
You got me too excited. I love that. That's exactly my
So my answer to that question is, I have several answers to it. First is, I believe that you can trust me because I don't have the attorney for the FOP supporting my candidacy. I don't have the FOP supporting my candidacy. I have my record supporting my candidacy. And I have a career where I have worked with law enforcement officers, and during that time, I have had to say to them, your case is not being prosecuted for this reason. But I also explain to them what the issue is so that we don't have that being repeated. I also have a history of even myself. I've been a prosecutor for almost 25 years now, and I've had interactions with officers that I know were inappropriate, that I reported to IA, and nothing happened. So I cannot buy into the idea that these types of things don't happen because they happen to me. And what was told to me was, well, you should have told them who you were. And it's like, no, I shouldn't have to tell them who I am in order to be treated the way that I should be treated. And so what comes from that experience is the realization that these things do happen. You can still be a professional cop and have a bad day and treat somebody a way that you're not supposed to. You can be a cop and make a mistake and actually take someone's life. You can be a cop and not make a mistake and take somebody's life. And I think that you need to have a prosecutor that understands all of those dynamics. And so I believe that you can believe me when I tell you that, because I'm running to be the county prosecutor, but if I'm only a one-term prosecutor because the voters want to vote me out, I'm fine with that too.
Thank you. Who would like to answer that?
So accountability, once again, is critical to restoring community trust. But what we have seen in our community and what life has demonstrated to us over and over again, that there are two criminal justice systems, okay? And so I've been twice elected in this community. I have never received the FOP endorsement, never. I am on record long before this election ever became a reality for me, saying that no one is beyond reproach. Two things can be true at the same time. And I have worked with police over and over again. Is the only way that I could be successful, not just as a former prosecutor, but as an elected official right now. But two things can be true at the same time. I can admit that there are dynamic public servants in our community, and also acknowledge that there are those who have abused their power in this community and have added to mistrust, all right? I am also acknowledging that we keep talking about crime up here as what's just transpiring out in our community without not having true critical conversations about white-collar crime, about police misconduct, and also public corruption. So when I say accountability for everyone, it has got to be everyone. We can't just cherry pick what's happening in black communities, black and brown communities, without also acknowledging what's happening down at the State House, because what's happening down at the State House is helping to facilitate what's happening in black and brown communities as well.
All right, who else would like to respond?
If you're going to determine people's fate, you must have faith. And the reason why faith is important to me is because if you're a believer in God, you act differently. Because the truth is we all come from the same spirit. So people in powers of position that hurt people are going to get the greater wrath from me. Control equals conflict. Ladies and gentlemen, you may not hear a lot from me. Luckily, you're here today. And the reason why is I don't fundraise, because I don't want anybody thinking that I owe them any favors. I'm here for you all, and that's everybody. And I'm the only candidate up here that's put a cop on the stand and called him a liar. I'm the only person up here that sued a cop for excessive force, and I'm the only one that sued a cop for wrongful death. So it's in my record, and I'll give you something that I can promise you, sir. My dad raised me, and he told me these two things. There's two things people can never take from you: your name and your word. So I give you my word that I'm not going to be that prosecutor that has favors. You'll never see me conflict off a case. The only way I'll conflict is if God or my parents are accused of a crime, and that's it. Thank you for your time.
Just to be clear, the lead attorney for the national FOP endorsed Shayla. So that's, I believe, what Natalia was talking about. And I don't believe the FOP in general has endorsed anybody. So just to be clear. My record, my record is that I prosecute police officers. I have done that in my career. So don't necessarily just judge me by what I say up here. Judge me by my record. I have prosecuted police officers. I have a police officer that is set to go to trial in October for killing someone. I have prosecuted police officers in different counties of the state of Ohio. I've prosecuted someone in Scioto County. I've prosecuted police officers in Montgomery County. So I stand by that work because it's important that the people of Franklin County can call on the police and rely on them for protection and not to harm them. And I believe a lot of police officers probably believe that as well. But regardless, whether they do or don't, we must hold police officers accountable. Because if we don't, then that is a system that I don't think any of us want to continue to live in.
Thank you. Any other? Wonderful, wonderful. Our time has come to naught, and we have had a wonderful opportunity to hear from the candidates. First of all, let me thank those who are in our audience today and for their participation and their cordiality, as well as those who are watching streaming today. We've come a long way in our electoral process. I would also encourage those who are watching, as well as those who are with us today, if you are not registered to vote, you do so. You've heard comments today about not being registered to vote and how that affects even in our legal system. Make sure you get out and vote for the candidate of your choice. My closing question to you, and I know others have other questions today, but we don't want to keep you too long, and I would encourage that those persons who have those questions for you would possibly talk to you afterwards and get those questions if you're free to them. We want to thank our candidates. We want to thank Shayla Favors, Anthony Pearson, Natalia Harris, and John Rutan. Come on, let's give everyone a hand if we will. Thank you so much. And here is the closing question that each of you will have 1 minute to answer and 1 minute to let us know, because prosecutors prosecute. So how will we be, how will the people who have the opportunity to elect you, when you are elected and serving, know that you will be a prosecutor of the people and not of the party you represent? Of course you want to be first, don't you? Let's let the ladies be first in closing.
So I believe, I mean, candidly, if I were to be able to, if it were my choice, I actually believe that the prosecutor's position should be a nonpartisan position. I mean, it's elected, you know, which causes politics to creep into it. and that is what it is, and that's the system that we're working within today. But because I believe that it should be a nonpartisan position, that does infiltrate into my approach as a prosecutor. I have my own personal values, you know, and as a human being, those things will filter into my work and how I prosecute. And they have over the years that I've been a prosecutor. Despite what Mr. Rutan says, I do believe in God, and God does guide me in a lot of what I do, but I do believe in the role of what the prosecutor is, which is to protect the rights of victims and to ensure that guilty people do not go free and that innocent people are not convicted. And to me, that crosses party lines. We should all want that.
Thank you very much. Shayla, lady.
So my campaign has received broad support, not just from elected leaders in this community, but from community and religious leaders, as well as national organizations. I have also received support from members of our community. And so I believe that my track record does speak for itself. As a person who has been committed and intentional about investing time, energy in our community and the issues that impact us. The reality is that equality is not the same as equity. And that word has been thrown around a couple of times today. I don't believe that this next prosecutor needs to go in and say, I'm just looking at everything and not recognizing the reality in which the criminal justice system operates in. It does disproportionately impact people of color. And if we are not intentional in our programs and our initiatives to counter that, then I'm just another person who is part of the problem, part of the system. And I have said this statement over and over again, that prosecutors are some of the most powerful people in this system, which means that we have a responsibility to reduce and repair the harms that have been caused by this unjust system. So if that's the only thing that you take away from me today, is that I'm going to continue to show up just as genuine as I've been as an elected leader in this community, but also someone who is highly invested in the success of all individuals in our county. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm going to be held accountable to the community as I have been since I've been a prosecutor. And after I'm county prosecutor, Democrats and Republicans will say that this is someone of integrity, because the lead law enforcement officer of the county should have integrity. And I'm just going to point out something. So a friend of mine received this text message, and it reads, "Hi, this is Johnny with Shayla Favor's campaign for Franklin County Prosecutor. As a city prosecutor, Shayla Favor prosecuted violent crimes in the courtroom and delivered justice for victims. But I find this odd because Shayla has never tried a case in the court of law."
What does that have to do with the question I asked?
It has to do with integrity of the next Franklin County prosecutor.
How will you represent the people and not the party?
I will not mislead the people of who I am and what my resume is. That's what I will do.
Thank you. John.
I hate to say it again, but love your neighbor like you love yourself. I'm here for the people. I wouldn't be doing this. I am running because I help out people all the time, but I'm not helping out enough. I'm not running because I'm looking for the next best job. I'm not running to deceive voters for the next best opportunity. I'm running because I'm tired of seeing everything that's going on. And I've learned two things growing up. My dad always told me. Complaining is worship to the devil. God wants action, so what are you going to do about it? That's why I'm here, ladies and gentlemen. Instead of sitting at home and complaining about it, I'm taking action to help you out. So how am I going to be held accountable? Two great reasons. I love this question. Number one, my cell phone. It's not going to change. Y'all have it. Please call me. Please text me. I'll be available. Number two, my favorite idea. And what I'm going to do is one day a month, I haven't decided what day yet, maybe the first Monday, whatever is easier, it depends upon the election year, is one day a month I'm going to have an open office policy, and this is what it's going to be. Anybody can come talk to me. Nothing you say can be used against you in a court of law, but it can be used against you in your sentence recommendation. And the reason why that's important to me is because if you're a defendant or you're a victim and you don't believe your case is being handled fairly, I'll learn about it. How else am I supposed to know what's going on with 131 lawyers and 10,000 active cases? Well, I'll be the first prosecutor that you ever heard of. They can actually walk in there and talk to them. I'll be the first prosecutor you've ever heard of. They can call or text. And more importantly, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to see me. Well, did you see Tyack? Did you see Tyack at all for 4 years? Absolutely not. The Democratic Party are good people, but you got to look at the person. You got to look at the character.
Once again,
Thank you for your time, sir.
thank you. No, thank you for your time. Thank you. Thank you for your time. I have the power of the mic. We want to thank everyone for coming out again. Come on, let's thank our candidates again. We are certainly appreciative of your presence here today. We encourage everyone to get out and vote. Somebody say vote. We're thankful to our local NAACP Unit 3177, our president, Nana Watson, and all of our officers. May God bless each of you and have a safe and prosperous week.